It's a perfect situation.
Hello, this is Liz. Welcome to my little urban homestead. Now, last night I started off a sourdough sponge to make a bread today, and I'll show you again how to make this because I'm going to do another one tomorrow. But in a bowl I need to add this 230 grams. I'm doing things by weight for this, but I'm moving on to this rye flour that I grind myself, and I know that that takes more water, but the original recipe is 230, so I'm putting that in. And my starter also goes in, well, not my starter, but the spongy I made yesterday. I can't speak properly today, but that's there now, and you can see that it's actually floating, and that is a sign that your sourdough sponge yeast has got enough oomph to actually rise a loaf of bread. Now I just used my mop mill and ground out 460 grams of flour, and that's rye flour. I'm putting in about a teaspoon of salt, now I normally use commercially bought flour, and I aren't now, so I think I might put another raisin agent in it. I'll put some baking powder in. And there's a teaspoon of baking powder gone in. And that's my flour now ready. I need to add a bit of oil, about the equivalent of 2 tablespoons of oil. Give that a quick mix. It's a very slow process, this is, but now there's the flour, and just mix it together. As I say, I'm now grinding my own flour, and this rye does take a lot more moisture, a lot more liquid. See, it's already, it's not too bad this time, I think. Oh, my hands are clean, so I'll go in and finish off with my hands, I think. This is a no-knead recipe that is more or less exactly the same as the one I've done before, but it's with commercial flour, which isn't as dry. You can see it's not quite used all the flour up. So let's just check. It just needs bringing together, I think. And for a change, it's exactly how I need it. Now I'm not kneading it, I'm just bringing it all together. that is going to be covered now and left for a good few hours in a warm place. And when it's, you know, got a lot bigger, it doesn't have to double in size with this rye bread, but when it started to rise, then I'll bring you back. This is my sourdough starter. It hasn't been fed in way over a month. I used it yesterday, so there isn't really any liquid on top of it, but I think I will be feeding it today. You want about 100 grams of it. Now, if you can only work in cup measurements, if you just Google what 100 grams is in cups, it will tell you. But it's a bit over. It's very forgiving, this is. So there's 100 grams of my starter, and over the next few days I will take it out of this container and feed it. As long as you feed it more than is in there, so say there's 200 grams in there, if you feed it 100 gram of flour and 100 gram of water, that should be all right. And that's what I do. I only give it a good feed every few months and keep it in the fridge. You don't have to constantly feed it every day and discard. So there's 100 gram of water, whoops, and 100 gram of flour. Once you've got your sourdough starter already on the go, if you've used whole wheat flour, you don't need to keep it whole wheat flour. You can if you want, but you can use a cheaper form of flour. And there is the spongy bit for making the bread, so that you can either put it in the fridge overnight or leave it out. Obviously, if you leave it out, it will create more bubbles faster, more air faster. So if you start this off in the morning, there's a possibility you could do it that night. But what I tend to do is I'll mix it up during the afternoon, the sponge, then the following day I'll turn that into I'll add more flour to it and turn it into the bread to allow it to rise for a few hours and then bake it. But that's how it is at the moment. And I'm just going to put a cover on it and leave it on the side in the kitchen, because the weather is getting colder now, so it does take a lot longer. Okay, see you later. Life got in the way, so I didn't do anything with this yesterday. It's now in the morning the following day. So what I'm going to do is get it ready for putting in the oven, because with this being a sourdough bread, it's more forgiving. More forgiving than normal bread. And it is quite wet, but as I said, rye flour seems to normally be very dry, so I've got water on my countertop and water on my hands so it doesn't stick, but it doesn't rise much, so I'm just basically any air that's in it, bringing it together. Sorry about that. He's a grumpy little dog, and that's where I'm now going to leave it in a warm place. I've got a bowl about the size of the cast iron that I'm going to be cooking it in, and I've lined it with biscuit paper, and it'll stay in there until I'm ready to cook it, which hopefully will be today. As I showed you earlier, I put the rye bread in here, and you can already see there is bubbles breaking on the surface. It's in this greased with paper, so I'll be able to put it in my cast iron dish, because that's how I like to bake all my bread. This is the one that I made afterwards, and that's sitting in the dish. It started breaking up and it's popping up, so this will be the second one in it. So it just shows you how forgiving sourdough is. Right, let me get my pan out now. Well, my cast iron. This is my cast iron, and you can see the smoke that's coming out of it. It's been in the oven for about 20 minutes on gas mark 6. You'll have to Google it to find out what that is in Fahrenheit and centigrade, because that's all I do is Google it to tell you the difference. And now all I'm going to do is just transfer it over. Open it out a bit. Get the lid back. Be careful when you're using cast iron, because the lid gets as hot as the pan does. I would use my Dutch oven, but it's a bit too large, so I use this cast iron saucepan. And I'll put it back in the oven now. Same temperature for about 25 minutes, and I'll start looking at it after 20. It's now had 25 minutes, and you can see there it isn't quite ready, but I'm taking the lid off, putting it back in the oven, and I left my silicone thing on the end. It's still alright, but it looks a bit burnt now. And I'm going to put this back for about another 7 minutes, something like that. It's had another 7 minutes. Oops. That does happen at times. Pull the bird out. That's really thin. If you turn it over, hot to handle at the moment. But if you turn it over, you can see that sounds hollow now. And it's still quite crunchy. You can put it back in the oven for another 5 minutes just to do the crust even more. But what I like to do, I don't like a crunchy crust, so I put it, wrap it up in a tea cloth on there, and it'll help it, one, to cool down, and two, it'll steam, and so the crust isn't so crunchy. And I'm going to put the other one in the oven now. The second one has just come out the oven, and I'll put them side by side so you can actually see a difference. This is all rye grain, but it had a lot longer to prove, and that it's about 24 hours. This has only had about 7 or 8 hours, and this is a combination of rye grains and commercially bought white bread flour. I'm not going to cut into this because this one will be going to my mother, and it's just come out the oven, and it's best not to cut it first. So this one has been cooling for about half an hour. It's still quite warm, and you can see there how soft it is. And this is the crust that's just come off it, and you can see how soft it is. And this is a combination, as I said, of rye grain and commercially bought white bread flour. And this I will have now. And guess what? It tastes like bread. Which is what you wanted. I put enough salt in that one. Good, because bread doesn't taste nice if you forget to put salt in. But thank you. Bye.
It's a